Hey everybody, this is Heidi, and you're listening to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. We all know that the fashion industry is brutally competitive and it takes loads of hard work to get ahead. The problem is that everyone's secretive and tight-lipped about their ways. After working as a designer and educator for over a decade, I wanted to help break down those barriers and bring you valuable knowledge from industry experts, and this show is exactly where you'll find that. Whether you're trying to break into the fashion world, make yourself more marketable, launch your own label, or become a successful freelancer, we'll help you get ahead in the cutthroat fashion industry.
Hello and welcome to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. My name is Marc. Today I'll be interviewing my wife Heidi, also known as Heidi. And we're doing this in celebration of the 1-year anniversary, isn't that right?
Yeah, episode 50, technically more or less 1 year of the podcast.
It is.
So we did some brainstorming and we thought it could be fun to turn the tables.
Actually, we didn't do any brainstorming. I had a number of other ideas that were all shot down, and then she said, I think you should interview me.
Is that how it went?
That's more or less how it went.
Okay. Well, either way, I feel pretty good with this idea for the 50th episode.
No, I think it's good.
Yeah.
And I think that, talking about what you've seen and done is from the past year over the span is really good.
Yeah.
So I should just set the scene.
I was actually just going to say we should set the scene.
We should set the scene. We got a new deck on our porch just weeks ago. So we're on our back deck having a drink on a weekend. Doing this interview. It is beautiful, like 75 degrees, sunny. Sun's going to set in about an hour or two. So I heard a sports ball game, I think, because I heard some cheering a couple times.
And our neighbor just pulled up and did their car alarm. Yeah. So if you hear a little background noise, it's just because we're outside, but it's nice.
And we're drinking. If you hear a little, we'll try to be quiet.
We're drinking spritzers. It's pretty mild.
Yeah, we're drinking.
It's like we diluted down to like 5% alcohol.
Yeah, seltzer and weak booze. Mostly seltzer. Well, let's get this going. So why don't you talk about the first thing you ever sewed or like really sewed?
My first memory of making anything is actually pretty late in life. It's not even until maybe it was 8th grade, but I feel like it was more high school. And my mom taught me how to use her Viking Husqvarna machine. It was I think it was the first machine she ever bought when she was young.
The same one you have now, right?
Yeah, and I still have it. She gave it to me, which is amazing. She gave it to me and got a different machine for herself. And so I have her old machine, which is like just this amazing, it's dark maroon, it's all metal, it weighs like 100 pounds.
I dread moving it.
And it's a great machine, and I feel really lucky to have it. It's totally, I feel like, beats any of the modern machines now. But anyway, I remember sewing in high school, and she taught me how to use the machine, but I didn't really utilize her to teach me how to sew. My mom knows how to sew very well. She made my 8th grade graduation dress, which I still have hanging in the closet. It's pink with white flowers on it. Maybe I should include a picture of that in the show notes.
There you go.
Anyways, and so she taught me how to use the machine, like how to thread it, how to make it go forward, backward, zigzag, all the basics. But I didn't really utilize her to actually teach me how to sew any actual garments. So what I did was I used to be a big, I still am, thrifter. And I would buy these graphic tees of any size, shape, whatever, men's, kids, women's, what have you. And I was really buying them for the graphics. And I would take the graphics, I would cut them out, and I would kind of patch sew them onto white ribbed Hanes tank tops, like the ones men wear for undershirts.
How punk rock of you.
Yeah. And that was it. That's what I sewed. I would sew a lot of that stuff. I mean, I would buy old men's Levi's and cut them into shorts, and let them naturally fray. And I guess I was always doing low-level modification, but as far as sewing goes,
I think a lot of people, girls in particular, cut-off jeans is, ever since Dukes of Hazzard, I suppose, is a...
Yeah, I suppose. But sewing, that was it. And then I didn't really like do much. I went off to college, and later in my college years, like junior, senior year, when I was working on my thesis, was when I really started sewing, and I decided I was gonna have a clothing line for my thesis. I was gonna like build a business, and I had my mom's machine. I think I was like home for a summer, and I was like, I'm gonna do this project. Can I take your machine with me to college? And that's when she gave it to me. And so I took it from California to Denver, and San Diego to Denver, and that's when I realized like I didn't really know how to sew. And I hired this woman, this awesome woman, and like I just went over to her house and she taught me some essentials, and I ultimately wound up taking classes at a vocational school to learn like more in-depth pattern drafting and garment construction, and from there on like started sewing more complicated garments, which grew into my clothing line and ultimately my business, Funklectic, which I've talked a lot about before.
Great name, worst name.
Worst name.
No, there's greatness in there.
No, I hate it. To this day, I still like hate. Oh, when I tell people what the name was, I'm like, oh, face palm. It was Funklectic. It was a word sandwich of funky and eclectic, and I thought it was so clever because I thought it really enveloped. Like, I'm funky and eclectic. I'm making all these clothes. They're Funklectic, but everybody called it Funkadelic, and it literally, like, even saying it now, like, makes me cringe.
Okay, we won't talk about that. Let it be entered into the record that mistakes are easy to make.
Yes.
And you'll have to find a way to live with them.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because I've talked to a lot of people about it since, and they're like, oh my God, the first thing I ever started, like, I named it this horrible name. And, like, I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll look back on some of this stuff I'm doing right now and think it's terrible. But that's okay. There's a saying that I love. It's, if you're not embarrassed of the first version of your product, you launched too late. And I think that on some level, like, you can always look back 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, and feel embarrassed about what you were doing at that point in time. But that's okay. Like, at least you're doing something. You're doing it.
That's not isolated to the fashion business.
No, it's not. It's anything.
But I think that fashion in general, not no matter, but in a lot of places, there's a time associated with it. Like,
yeah,
things are dated maybe a little harder than they could be in other areas.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of designers who say, yeah, you can look back on anything you designed even a year, 2-3 years ago, and you thought it was the greatest thing at that moment. I think there's some things that are timeless and classic, but a lot of times you just look back and it's just, even if it's not super trend driven, you look back and you're like, oh, that was not the best, but that's okay.
You know what? Maybe that's why people like working in digital art so much. You can easily lose your 5-year-old work you don't want to look at anymore, but
yeah,
sometimes you can keep bumping into that same dress on the street and there's nothing you can do about it.
It is what it is. I think, like you said, it happens in any industry.
Yeah. So you have a degree in design, right? EMAD.
Graphic design.
Yeah, graphic design.
Yeah.
And EMAD was electronic media arts and design.
Yep, that was my major at the University of Denver.
Yeah, which we still live sort of close to, or at least we're living close to.
It's about less than a mile north. I can see it from here.
I can actually, yeah.
Yeah.
You can see it. So you learned Illustrator, design principles, color, all the digital stuff, and some of the terminology and things like that. And you ended up in fashion. So going to a school for graphic design, and you have a minor in marketing and Spanish?
Uh-huh.
So marketing sort of related to what you do, if not completely. And I think that the design is as well, but neither of them were fashion design. So how well prepared were you to work in the fashion business? Like, how much learning did you need, or did you know the right stuff and only have to catch up here, or did you have the wrong stuff? And
I mean, I didn't know anything. Like, I didn't know what a tech pack was. I didn't know about lab dips or hand looms or strike offs, or, how like collections got built and what the whole production and manufacturing process was like. I didn't understand any of that. I learned and knew enough about garment construction, the essentials of that. I'm not a technical designer, but I knew enough about that. And then, I had some of the design principles and I had the computer skills. And so, it was that, and then me really learning some of the fashion stuff on my own and having my own collections and doing fashion shows and having a little portfolio of work. That, with my computer skills, has really got me in the door for my first job in the industry. That being said, yes, I got in the door and I was like, I know some of this, but I don't know what a lot of this is. Like I said, I didn't know a lot of the fundamentals. But I learned all that on the job, and my boss and ultimately who then became my business partner in my freelance and contract agency that we run, she taught me everything. She taught me everything I know about, like, actually what goes into, garment production and the whole design process and how everything works. And I think there was a minute that I, felt I wished I would have gone to fashion school instead, but, at the time I just didn't know, or I didn't really think that was an option, I guess, being a fashion designer.
I remember a 6-month period where you had said, or at least believed, you said, I want to go to fashion school, and in one of the major cities, FIT or whatever it might be. I remember you declaring that, like coming out of a bad hangover, saying, I'm never drinking again. I'm going to fashion school.
Yeah, I did.
I forget
when. There
when.
was a while where I was like, I really wish I would have gone to fashion school, and maybe I should go do like a 2-year program or something. And that didn't last, and I realized I didn't need to go to fashion school, and I'm glad that I didn't, because what I realized was, at least this is how I feel. I felt that the skills that I had coming into it, like, some of the design eye and the design principles, as you said, I learned those I think are sometimes inherent. And then
some people are artsy, some people are technical.
And some people just naturally have an eye, what have you. So, I came in with that, and I came in with the computer skills. And I think it was easier to come in with those 2 skills and then learn the other stuff. Learn, what does it look like to produce a whole collection and manufacture product and source and pricing and like all that stuff. I felt
product life cycle, really.
Yeah, it was easier to learn on the job than looking back on it. What I then learned about fashion school and kind of how a lot of programs work, I just didn't need to go and get those skills. The stuff I needed to learn was easy to learn on the job, at least for me, and maybe that's because I had such a great teacher on the job. My boss, Anne, at the time, was and still is a great teacher, mentor, very willing to educate, especially, I think, and this is something I say a lot to my audience, but it's like, if you're willing to put in the effort to learn and you show drive and ambition, there are a lot of people out there that are happy to teach you and take you under their wing. Well, but you have to put in the effort to show that, like, you're trying to do this, you're trying to self-educate, and then you use them to supplement. It's not like you just go to them and ask for everything on a silver platter, which that could be a whole other conversation, but that's something I see happening is someone just wants everything spoon-fed to them. So anyways, I was lucky to have a great mentor, and a lot of those fashion skills were easy to learn on the job versus the skills I came in with. I was glad that I came in when I started with those.
I think that a lot of people enjoy sharing skills with enthusiastic, intelligent people. Like, that's really more like collaboration, which everybody likes.
Yeah.
So I guess in this interview, I have some duty to maybe open up this stuff a little bit further, since I've generally seen your entire evolution into this career.
Yeah, 15 years.
Like the whole transformation, every phase I've seen or helped or had to fly with you, and you've had much the same with me. So I think it's important to just say that, we came together initially for many, many reasons, and you were doing graphic design at the same time I was doing graphic design naturally in my life, and I was freelancing, and we ended up collaborating on all sorts of things, and I was also doing more music and was in bands, and we started playing shows and renting out larger and larger venues, and then I remember that with some of my music friends who are very close family friends with you, we were doing shows and you were doing the whole, your own line and running the fashion show. I emceed some of that stuff even.
Yeah,
it was
we
our
were
band.
doing all those collaborative events with music and fashion and...
Because I don't think that stuff comes up much in your interviews that I've heard as the editor of them.
It doesn't.
And, like all of the work that you did, it's like, okay, you went to graphic design school. We get that. Probably heard that. And you have an agency and you learned on the job and we've heard that. But when you went home from that job or weren't, like, say, doing that day job, we were always planning, always building. What do you take away from that? Is that stuff contributing to what you're doing now and where you're going?
Oh my God, 150%.
Well, what were some of the lessons learned, or what muscles did you strengthen by doing some of these other exercises?
Okay, so first of all, like, just to kind of clarify, because I have talked a lot about this before, but like, this was when I was out of college. My first job out of college, I was working as a receptionist, and all of this kind of started at that time. So I was working 40 hours a week at a job that I just didn't really enjoy. It was not what I wanted to do. Long story short, I fell into it, whatever. I don't really know what happened. That's okay. So we were doing all this stuff on the side. I was sewing, and I was just producing all these garments, and I wanted to do something in fashion, and you, as you said, have had a band, and we're playing a bunch of music, and so we started collaborating and putting on these events, and you would play music and I would do fashion shows, and I started getting really involved in the local community and doing markets and trying to sell. A lot of them were failures, some of them were successes.
Oh, I remember some great successes on that.
Yeah, some great successes, but I also remember a lot of really tough ones where we would set up the booth from like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and come home and I had made like $30. Anyways, that all aside, I think that was really like, looking back on it, all of that stuff that I was doing on my own on the side at night after I got home from work on the weekends is what got my foot in the door at my first job in the industry. Because if I had just had the graphic design degree, but no, I didn't have anything to show for fashion, that wouldn't have happened. And so I think it shows two things. One is it showed what my eye as a designer was, which some of that first stuff was pretty rough. That's okay. Like I said earlier, we all have things we're embarrassed of. We all grow. But second, it showed my drive and my ambition as a designer and as an individual. And I think it was a really good learning experience for me because, we took that brand, Funklectic, and it started here in Denver with, some dinky little fashion shows and like these dive bars. It was, whatever.
I think you're being a little mean.
Well, some of them were rough. Some of them were a little bit more professional as the brand grew and we kind of learned, we cut our teeth. And then we took it on the road and we did trade shows and we really kind of turned it into a business, and I learned how to like sell wholesale and deal with buyers and put together line sheets, and I kind of learned all that just by doing it and trial and error.
The shared need. You had the same need as any other brand where bill or keep track of stuff.
Yeah, but you asked like, how do I think that contributed or contributes to what I'm doing now or how the career built, and that was the foundation. That was where it started. If I hadn't done any of that, I don't think I would be where I am right now. Because I don't know if I would have ever been able to break into the industry and to a job and gotten that experience and then been able to break out and go out on my own. But that being said, I had a conversation with someone recently and we were talking a lot about how it was a recent podcast episode, and we talked a lot about how when you want something or when you have an interest in something that is so strong, it's almost like an extension of you. Like, you have to do it. So none of that I was doing because I felt forced or because I had to or because it was a job. It was just because that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
You just do it.
So I've often heard you, and you have a really wide spectrum on how you react to this stuff, but I've heard you talk about smaller labels and startups and stuff like that. It's just being so dangerous and an easy way to lose a lot of money or something. And I think that you might have had more success than other people's first labels, but that's neither here nor there. But you're going through all the same motions, really, coordinating all of these things.
Yes and no.
So why is it no? Where's the no?
The no is because the majority of the people that I feel like I hear from are saying things like they are just they have this idea and they want to put it into production, like at a factory, and they want to
blink or snap.
And they're going to hire pattern makers. They're going to get all their stuff together. They've got all their branding. They're paying a lot of people to develop all of this, and they're ready to go into production, and they're going to produce like even 50 units. I mean, 50 is not that many, but if you look at what the foundation is to professionally build and produce 50 units, it's very expensive.
Right.
And so I think what I don't know if scares me is the right word, but, and I shouldn't even say concerns me because it's not really of my concern, but I mean it is because I do want to look out for the best interest of these people. Does it bring you anxiety? Yeah, but a lot of things bring me anxiety. But I think that's where I get a little nervous when I hear people say oh, I'm going to have this startup brand, and that's great.
But wasn't your startup brand a gateway to these things you're doing now?
But I didn't dump $25,000 in to launch with production. I literally scrapped it together one step at a time. I funded it 100% with my own money, and then little by little, as I made money and as I learned what the market wanted, and as I did these craft shows and little farmers markets, and I set up my booth, I would learn what sold, what didn't sell. I would create more of what sold, and I slowly built. And then I took what was working, and slowly I did at one point have some women making stuff for me, but at that point it was mostly jewelry and accessories because that's what was selling, and that's what was easy, and that's what had the higher profit margin. Right. And so that's where I think there's something to be said with kind of starting small. And it doesn't mean that you can't put any money into it, because obviously you have to put money into it. But I think the scary part for me is when people want to just dump $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, because that is kind of what it takes at the end of the day if you want to professionally go into production, and they want to just buy 200 units of this design that they think is brilliant, and they have not done the foundation of learning the market, learning their customer, understanding what they want, making sure this is the right thing to go into production with. Because then what happens, before I say what happens, also learning about what it really takes to sell that product. Because it is hard to sell product, whether you're selling it online or whether you're doing pop-up shops or you're selling it wholesale. It is hard to sell product. And so I think what happens is people jump right into producing and ordering and buying a bunch of inventory, and then this is where literally breaks my heart. I've seen it happen way too many times. They go into production and they sit on all this inventory that they bought because they can't sell it, and maybe it's because their customer
you were
doesn't
sitting
really
on
want
inventory
it.
of a different type. I mean, I this is an interesting discussion, but it's hard to differentiate what is a good bad experience and a bad experience in this too, because the point I was interested in is you're still managing inventory, trying to project stuff, trying not to waste money ideally, and some people waste money in whatever their endeavor might be. Did that help cement some of your skills of you're doing management of a complete creation of something in a lot of your projects, where you start with the drawings and you end up with something in your hand, and you're kind of there every step of the way in one way. You were also doing that for your own brand, like a lot of these other startup brands. Do you think that that's a good solid experience to transition into? Maybe it's a good place to go is don't lose your shirt, but maybe some startup lines is a good place to catch these skills.
I do, and I advise people, because people ask me all the time, what could I do? What should I do? I actually just talked about this. It'll be released after this episode, but for the mailbag episode, someone asking, how do I start if I don't have any money? And I'm like, you start really small. You start by sewing a couple garments for yourself, and you wear them out,
get your feedback.
Get feedback, talk to people. Then, maybe you save up and you make a few more and you see what you can do with this.
Find a good noisy person, give them a free one.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a long list of things. There's other routes. People do Kickstarter, which can be hot or cold as far as success goes, and monetary, balancing things out on a monetary level. But
yeah,
I think there's validity in doing it, because here's the other thing too, and this is what's true of people that I talk to who've done their own brand or who still are doing their own brand. You don't regret it. Like, even if you lose a bunch of money and it goes south or whatever happens, you may look back and you think, okay, I could have done things differently. I could have done things smarter, but you don't regret it. I don't regret anything that I've done, and I know a lot of people that have had brands, even ones that have completely tanked and flopped, and they had to close out their inventory to the thrift store, or that's not even close out, that's just donate, or to eBay, or to Ross or whatever. You don't regret doing it because you learn a lot and it's experience you go through. So I guess all I would say is start small, be smart, don't get in over your head, don't try to move too fast. And learn what you can as you go, and just get advice and expertise from people who are willing to give it to you, and from people who have been there before. And it takes time to build something.
Oh, completely.
And I think that's where it gets scary, is someone who's I want to have this brand up in 3 to 6 months, or and they just dive in with all their money and their savings, and they just buy all this inventory, and then it's poof, gone.
Hey, there's going to be newbies and bad assumptions in any business anywhere. Yeah. So with 1 year down, give or take, on the podcast, what are some key insights or revelations you've had talking to everybody and producing this?
Super interesting. So this is actually a conversation I've been having with this woman, Robin, and you will hear her on the podcast soon, because she and I are collaborating for these little mini episodes. We don't know what they're going to be called yet, but ultimately they're kind of picking out themes across all of the episodes, because here's the thing. Whether you're launching your label, whether you're being a freelancer, or whether you're, working as an employee, those are kind of the 3 big categories we talk about on the show. There's a lot of themes that come up over and over. So some of the key takeaways that I've seen is providing exceptional value or providing an exceptional experience. So if you're an employee, doing a really kick-ass job at your job, doing the extra credit, which is something I've kind of been coining lately. I'm what's that extra 5 or 10% you can do to go above and beyond what's expected of you? If you're a brand, what does that look like? Maybe it includes, it's having a handwritten note in your orders that you ship to people. What is that? What is it that you can do a little bit above and beyond to make yourself stand out? And when your customer gets the product or has an interaction or experience with you, they think, wow, that is so cool what that brand's doing. As a freelancer, that just means going above and beyond for your clients, giving them something they didn't quite expect. So going above and beyond, doing an exceptional job is a huge trend I see in people that are really excelling. One I just talked about is starting small and going slow.
Right.
It's not diving in and getting in over your head. And again, that can go with anything. I mean, looking back, I quit my job with no real plan. I mean, I had a plan that I was going to freelance, and then the first year I didn't make a penny. So that was not the smartest in hindsight. Whatever, I worked it out. But, start slow. What does that mean? Maybe that means doing some projects on the side of your day job. Maybe that means starting your collection really small and slow. Any of these things that are really awesome in life, they take time to build. So start small, go slow, take your time, do things right. Huge trend. Knowing your customer, insanely big. Like I said, kind of goes hand in hand with starting small. Go to these events, see what people like, see what the feedback is. Don't just make something because you think it's brilliant. At the end of the day, you need to collect money from other people. So what do they think is brilliant? What do they love? What do they hate? How can you make it better for them? That's something I apply to my day-to-day business and successful fashion designer. I talk to people all the time. I'm on Skype all the time. You're witness to that.
Yes, I am.
I constantly engage with my customer and my audience to know what they want, what they love, what they hate, what can I do better, getting feedback. Again, that goes whether it's your brand or whether you're doing freelance or whether you're in your job. Understand who you're targeting with this product and how can you make it better for them? And that comes in the form of talking to them. That can also come in the form of, if you're working in an employee role, talking to your boss and your coworkers and understanding, like getting some feedback. What do they love about the way you work? What can you do better? Just getting to know the people around you and then doing a great job in a way that best helps everybody. So I could go on. I would say those are some of the big ones. Doing an exceptional job, going slow and starting small and really going about things smart, and understanding and knowing your customer. Whether your customer is the person that's buying the end product, whether the customer, in other words, might be your client or your boss, but like who are you doing the work for? And then making sure that the work that you're doing is best serving them. And that comes in the form of talking to them and getting feedback and doing engagement.
Okay. So I'm going to try to tighten the screws down on you a little bit.
Okay.
I asked you what revelations or takeaways. Now I think you've just reinforced things that, like at least two of those, you had cemented before you started doing your podcast. I would say exceptional work, absolutely. We've been talking about that for 5 years.
Yeah, but those are still trends that I see. Okay, so you're looking for new revelations or takeaways?
So your answer's fine, but I want you to actually think about and tell me. Okay, we've done some 50 whatever interviews,
yeah,
and a lot of setup.
Yeah.
What either maybe formed in your mind later or hit you in the podcast that was just didn't expect, changed your view on something? What was an aha moment that was provided to you by your interview?
Interviews.
I'm talking about by an interview, yes.
By an interview. Okay.
Or multiple ones.
That's a harder question. You're right. All of those are kind of things I have always, not always, but more recently known and understood, and then have been reinforced by what I have heard and
you could say that those are a takeaway from a revelation in the podcast because this pattern started to form that you're working with. But who did you talk to and you're just like, I didn't know that, or that's interesting, or I would have never thought about it, in that particular manner if you hadn't had that conversation?
Okay, so I'm actually thinking of one example, but then there's a broader example that I actually would never have thought of. Okay, so there's multiple examples of this. The one that's coming to mind is a conversation with Anna, or I think it's pronounced Anna. Sorry, Anna, of Vmora, and she is a design and development agency out of the Chicago area. She helps brands with start through initial concept through bulk production. And she, the key thing of her interview was being niche. And like, I've kind of always understood this concept, but she was telling me this story about this brand she works with that they help support, that makes, I'm going to forget the name, but what are the little dresses that the German beer women wear?
Are you really asking me about something like that?
Those little, they're like green and they've got little
I could say looks like
them.
the St. Pauli's girl.
Yeah.
They're kind of Bavarian.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know the proper name.
This woman has this company and she is like killing it. That's like all she makes is this, these, I can't think of the name of these little dresses. Anyways, and she, like, some people buy them because whatever, maybe it's a costume or I don't know, something. She sells to a lot of restaurants
That makes sense.
For uniforms, and she is doing amazing. And so the takeaway was kind of twofold. Is one, don't like discount all these weird, interesting, super tiny little niche markets that still need clothes, right? No,
Hey,
seriously,
those
though.
people over there, you see them? They need clothes too.
Yeah. And it could be so niche, but like if you are the one person in that market that is doing the best job, it's like you're a much bigger fish in a smaller sea or ocean. So I think it kind of opened my eyes to two things, and those are the examples that I'm looking at, or I'm thinking of. But
Right.
one is, this idea that like fashion is everywhere, and quote unquote fashion, like whether you want to call that fashion or not, I don't know. It's still clothes.
The need for clothes.
Yeah.
Some are just more appealing than others.
Yeah, and like you may not, like if you think that's a really cool market and you're excited about it, it doesn't have to just be fashion for fashion's sake. So I think it was this whole idea of like, wow, what a tiny, tiny, tiny little slice of the pie. But like, you don't need that big of a slice of a pie to do something really awesome with your brand, with your business. You don't need to be this multi-million-dollar, even this multi-$100,000 thing. It's amazing what you can produce as one person with a few maybe contract freelance workers in a tiny, tiny, tiny little niche market that you maybe wouldn't have even looked at as quote unquote fashion in the first place. That's a fascinating concept to me.
Well, I think we've talked about this many times. There's the 1,000 fan model.
Yeah.
If you can get 1,000 people out there to give you $50 a year because they like what you do, and in this case, let's say you could make $50 profit from 1,000 people.
That's $50,000.
That's enough to sustain you and allow you to.
I mean, no overhead. That doesn't count like expense. Like if your garment costs $20.
Well, we don't want to. We don't need to. Dive into the minutia, but there's plenty of people who make less than that and survive just fine.
Yeah.
Some of them have families and children.
You don't need this giant thing.
Yeah. So, if you really like what you do or you have a unique idea, like maybe there is a micro niche, a environment
micro
for
niche.
you.
That's a great. Yeah, that's what it is. That's great.
Because, well, you're the authority on these St. Pauli girl looking costumes, or not
I'm
costumes.
like killing myself. I can't think of what that little outfit.
I want to say lederhosen, but I think that's.
I think it might be.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like those are the pantyhose things, but I'm notoriously underdeveloped on my fashion terminology.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. That's okay. Everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah. There's a couple terms in there that sometimes I'm not.
So
on
the
board
micro
with.
niche and the fashion can be anything, anywhere. It doesn't have to be this runway stuff, and you don't need that much to like make a success. It can be this micro slice of the pie.
Interesting. So, I wanted to get you to talk about something that I thought was really cool, and you have a lot of passion behind it, is the idea of how you see things that you create on a screen turn into delivered boxes with the physical product in it, the opening of a Christmas present.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a few times in the past. To me, I think that's a big part of what you do and where the love comes from, where the passion comes from, because that reinforces everything you're doing, and it feels, you just love it. I hear about it all the time.
I do. I remember the very first design that I ever worked on. It was at my first job in the industry. It was doing lifestyle and golf apparel, which I still do a fair amount of.
Was it a vest?
It was a vest.
Right.
And, here I was, like I had gone to school for graphic design, as we talked about. I had made a bunch of my own clothes that I was selling and wearing for myself, but those were all garments I had, went to Joann's and
convinced
bought
this company to hire you, almost.
I had gone to Joann's and bought fabric, and I had sewn up garments, and that's what turned into the garment, right? Is this idea in my head, and maybe I did a little sketching and turned it into a garment. But I had never sat down in Illustrator and sketched an entire garment and designed all this stuff and then put the specs together and sent it off to a factory. And then a couple weeks later, a box shows up and there's a prototype inside of this thing that used to just be like a line drawing in Illustrator with some call outs. And the first one that I experienced that, it was pretty phenomenal. It was this khaki colored beige vest with these embroidered flowers all over it. It was terribly not my style, but that was okay. Like, that didn't really matter. And you know, you work on it forever. And I remember the owner of the company, names withheld, not that anybody would know, but I remember the owner of the company. She was a real tough nut. And she would hover over my shoulder while I was working. And it was like super high intense anxiety. I'm like sitting there sketching in Illustrator.
She had a lot of the, at least from your stories, and I met her like twice.
Yeah.
She had the Devil Wears Prada character to a degree.
Yeah,
that wasn't her.
No, that wasn't totally her, but there were some parallels.
Yeah, there were similarities.
So she would hover over my shoulder, and I remember her like sometimes she'd even just pull up a chair like right next to the corner of your desk and just sit there, and you're like, oh God.
Thank you. That helps me work.
Yeah, right. No pressure. And I mean, I was like so young, and it was my first job in the industry, and I was like, oh my God, my heart's pounding. I'm like sweating. I'm a big sweater. I think I've talked about that before in emails. Anyhow, and I remember this product in particular, like she and I sat and we tweaked over it was this like florally vine pattern that was ultimately embroidered onto the fabric that was then turned into the garment. And I was designing the garment and I was designing the vine pattern that was embroidered on the textile.
Right.
And we tweaked over that and the repeat for it for like ever. You know, so you sit behind a computer screen in Illustrator and you work at this digitally and you print it out and you look at full-scale artwork and the whole, you know, process and stuff.
Yeah.
But then, like, nothing beats when a garment comes back from the factory and then it's like this real tangible thing that you can touch and hold and feel and, like, put on your body and you're like, I designed that. I drew that on the computer or maybe by hand. I'm not a hand sketcher. Everybody knows that. And then that turned into a real garment. And, you know, that was, over a decade ago, that first one happened.
I would say that'd have to be about 08 area.
No, it would have been 07, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it would have been before 08, so probably 07.
So, you know, I mean, there's nothing like that first one. That first garment that you get back that's actually a real garment from a sketch. There's nothing like the first one, but the feeling never dies. Like, even to this day, I still get really, really excited to open boxes of submits, whether it just be, you know, a strike off, which is just a swatch of fabric with the screen printed artwork on it to approve for either layout or color or quality, whatever. You can approve of various things, but I never get sick of receiving those submits. Again, maybe it's a portion of the garment or the textile or the fabric, or maybe it's the entire garment itself. You know, you just don't get sick of seeing those ideas that went from a line drawing to an actual physical thing in your hand. It's like getting those boxes. It's always exciting to open them and see what's inside. It's like you're like a kid on Christmas morning. And that is something I do really love about this industry, is like you turn this digital sketch into a real life product. I mean, that happens in other industries too.
Yeah. No. You know,
obviously.
Not everything's been digitized yet.
Yeah.
There are some real world stuff.
Yeah.
I remember with some of the jewelry that you were doing, I was picking up the orders basically from the laser cutter and you were sending them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've been manufacturing. You've had so many different times where you've taken, let's say, a digital thing and turned that into something physical. We were cleaning the garage recently and I ran across a punch you had made.
We still have it.
Yeah, we still have a punch. I mean, that was expensive, probably $100 or something spent on that.
I forget, but that was when I was making all the guitar pick jewelry and I had a die.
A die?
A metal die, custom made in the shape of a guitar pick. because I wanted to. I went on this like.
It's the credit cards.
It was the credit cards.
Yeah, it was credit card earrings in the shape of a guitar pick, and they are actually good guitar picks. Some of my guitar playing friends told me.
So
they used your
So two
earrings.
things happened with those, and then there's a funny story that you're gonna love on the side of this. But one, they don't do it as much anymore, but like they used to, and they still do it. You know, when you get like a promotion in the mail for a credit card, they actually send you like a credit card that has like the fake numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it's the actual credit card.
They know you're gonna open the envelope because there's something.
Yeah.
There's something stiff in there. It feels like a credit card. You don't want to throw a credit card out.
And
everybody's like Seinfeld at that.
Sometimes they're paper, their credit cards are like cardboard, but some of them were actual plastic. And so I started collecting them because I thought
as did most of your family members.
And then my mom was collecting them. My mom had her neighbors collecting them. And then my mom.
I think I know the story you're going to try to tell.
She was saving ones of her credit cards that had expired, which you don't get that many of those. You maybe get like 1 or 2 a year, but then she had her friends saving them. So I had all these people collecting credit cards for me. And had this huge stack of credit cards that the goal was, and then that's what we got the punch made for. I remember I found this really cool guy to make it for me, and he was awesome, and he
it's just a welder type of guy thing.
Yeah. And so then I would punch the guitar picks out of the credit cards and turn those into jewelry, which was like part of my line that really took off.
Which I also had to help you build a high pressure rig to be able to
punch them.
Yeah, to create the because the hammer was just not worth it. You just can't sit there and bang it with a hammer. It was not really that way. So we used soft wood, and we used a crank, and we built that for you.
We did build a little jig that.
And we built our own little manufacturing facility again.
And then I had like all these these guitar picks built out of credit cards, and then they got turned into jewelry, and then. That was part of my recycled line.
So we got a drill press, I believe, to help make the drilling of those easier. I'm just, there's so many different steps. So I know the story you're going to tell, right?
It's the
Safeway.
We're at Line and Safeway.
Yeah, the grocery store. Our local one.
Where we know the checkout people.
Right.
And I'm like collecting these credit cards, and I don't know if whatever. I had a jacket on, and I just had a bunch of these credit cards in my pocket. Some of them were expired, or debit cards, whatever. Some of them were the sample ones the promotional ones that come in the mail. But I had a stack of credit cards in my pocket, probably an inch or two thick. A substantial amount of credit cards. And we're in line paying, and I reached in my pocket to grab chapstick or something. I don't even know what was in my pocket that I was grabbing.
You were paying or something, I think.
And this huge stack of credit cards comes flying out of my pocket and sprawls all over the checkout line on the floor.
Didn't I just walk away from you I didn't know you?
I am so embarrassed. Who is this woman? We weren't married at that point, I don't think. But you're who is this girl I am dating? She just flailed out.
Oh, we were a couple years into a relationship.
30 credit cards of her pocket in the line at the checkout at the grocery store.
Well, I was the same era as
and
you.
And we're on our hands and knees, and they're really hard to pick up because you can't get your nail under them.
It was embarrassing. That was the same era where I remember the infamous latte drop.
Oh, my hand went through a weak spell where I literally would just drop things out of my hand.
It was the weirdest thing because it was in that same Safeway, and a latte glass jumped to the floor.
To the coffee shop, and then I would just drop my latte, and I would sadly mope back to our local coffee shop, and I was I dropped my coffee, and they would always give me another one for free.
Because they're great.
We still go there.
Yeah, they're a great coffee shop. Just looking at my notes here. This is not going to go the way you think it is.
Oh, throwing me a curveball again?
Your podcast has I'm going to say famous and standard closing question for all of your guests.
Sure does.
And I was wondering if you would want to end this podcast talking about your favorite answer so far.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that.
So the question for some people who maybe didn't hear
you can set that up too. That's all yours.
Well, we can't just go into this blindly.
Okay.
So the question is, and I will give credit right now to my lovely husband who came up with this question. And I think my audience has love-hate relationship with this question, because I've gotten some feedback from people that say, God, Heidi, that question at the end is so awkward. You ask it and the guest like always pauses. They don't know what to answer. And maybe you should reconsider the question. I've had people tell me that. But I like the question because it stumps everybody, and we often do. Side note, little behind the scenes glimpse here. We often do have to edit out like 30 to 60 seconds after I ask the question because the guests get so stumped. But then I re-explain it, and they always come up with a brilliant answer. And so I like it because it makes them think really hard, and then it does inspire some really interesting answers. That said, if you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you know the question is, what is one thing you wish people asked you about working in the fashion industry but never do?
Right.
And what is like one of the most inspiring answers I've ever gotten? Is that the question?
Yeah, I wrote it down as, what is your favorite answer so far? And just a quick note on that question, since you gave me credit. I think that everybody and anything that they're interested in, be it a hobby, a profession, your car maybe, you're always getting asked this small collection of questions. Mm-hmm. Nobody asked me about this other thing. Yeah. So that was kind of where the inspiration came from.
Yeah, I know the answer.
Yeah, and offering every one of your guests to say, I work in this profession, and you know what? Nobody ever talks about this or asks me about this. It's a really handy question. So I want to talk about your favorite answer so far. Yeah. And if you want to answer the question too, that's also there for you.
Okay, well, let's start with the favorite answer.
Okay.
And then I actually have a couple other things I did want to throw out aside from that question. But you know what is actually really cool? While we had this back and forth banter about the question, I thought of my favorite answer. So thank you for buying me that extra 60 seconds while I was thinking in the background. And you know what's really freaking cool is the first guest that I ever had on the podcast, Bjorn Benston, episode 1. One of my favorite guests to date. He is amazing. We know each other in real life. He actually took my Illustrator course when it was still a real live workshop in New York City, and he came into my class, and we met there and kind of became contacts in the industry, and I reached out to him for the first interview, and his answer, and he didn't even pause. I don't even think we didn't have to edit his answer was, what is one question nobody ever asked you about working in fashion that you wish they did?
Oh yeah,
and he said,
I remember the answer actually.
Do you?
I do.
He said, are you happy?
Yep.
And he said, I think there's this level of assumption that people think, oh, you work in fashion, like how glamorous, how cool, how amazing, rah, 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 like all these beautiful, fluffy things. And he's like, nobody ever asks you, like, are you happy? Do you love what you do? And, to this day now, we've done 49 other interviews. I've gotten a variation of that answer maybe a couple more times, maybe 2 or 3. I can't remember the exact guess off the top of my head, but people have kind of said variations of that. Not many, but I just thought, you know what? I love that because I think it's so easy to assume, especially if maybe you're like thinking of going into the industry, and that could be a great question to ask someone who, just like, are you happy, or do you still really love this, like some years later, however long it's been that you've been in the industry? And I think that it's an important question to also ask yourself, because I think it's good to do accurate self-assessment and to kind of look at, like, where am I at? How am I feeling? You can't just snap your fingers and make a change, but if you really, truly do analyze, like, am I happy? You may be, and that's great, or you may not be. And then you kind of have to take it into your own hands to think about, okay, what could I do to pivot, and, like, what might that actually look like? And, that could be a whole other conversation. But I think it's an important question to ask. Maybe whether it's your friend that's working in the industry, or your coworker that's working in the industry, or your boss, and you're looking at, like, where might I be in 5 years? And then, as I said, I'll just reiterate, because I think it's also an important question to ask yourself.
I think that answer which came in the form of a question.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, the question solicits a question.
Well, yeah. Is that is probably one of the questions that nobody is asking.
No,
Of
they're not.
one of the most important questions you could ask, that's probably the one that we should be asking more.
Yeah.
Your boss should be asking you. You should be asking your employees.
Yeah,
you should be asking yourself.
Yeah, even I was saying more like sideways and upward. You should be asking, but it should also be downward.
In every direction, you should be asking that question.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So we it's kind of poignant that was, S1E1. The first episode we did.
It is poignant, but that's really one of the answers I love the best.
No, and I think you're right, because I've edited all of your podcasts and listened to just about all of them. Sometimes in the room live with you, but we went into this interview and I said, "Hey, what questions do you want me to hit? What soapbox do you want me to build for you to talk off of in this? Is there an agenda?" And you didn't come back with anything.
I said no. I just ask me whatever. I just want it to be an organic conversation. I don't want to give you questions to ask me. That didn't feel right.
Well, it happens a lot.
Okay,
maybe not in your
maybe
not in your podcast, but it happens out there, and that's neither here nor there. Again. So I spent about a week, maybe 2 weeks, just thinking about it, and I wrote down my questions, which I used here today.
Yeah.
And what was the stuff that I missed? What did you want to talk about? Because you already hinted once at that. What were the other things you wanted to hit on before we close this out?
Well, I would say I think there's really just kind of one thing, and I think you're gonna like this point I'm gonna make, but because we've been talking about it. But I've always made this comment of I've always told people to just just get started, just do something. And my good friend Trisha, who was on the show with Hello World Fashion, she and I have also talked about this. You want to work in fashion? Do something. What does that mean? What does that look like? I don't know. For you, it may mean or look like something different. But do something. Whether that means starting to sew some clothes for yourself and wearing them out and seeing what how they react. I don't know what it looks like for you, but just do something. So I had always kind of said that, but that feels really tough to put a finger on. Just do something. What the F does that mean?
It also means maybe it almost implies you're not doing anything or not doing enough.
But then this is a conversation I've had with people too, is sometimes people aren't doing anything. They're talking a lot. They're talking about this idea they have, this thing they want, but they're not actually doing anything.
They got good SEO.
Yeah. I don't know what that looks like. Start doing research, start sketching in Illustrator, putting some designs together. I don't know. Maybe it goes somewhere, maybe it doesn't, but do something. And so that being said, we heard one of the guys on the tech shows that you listen to and every morning while cooking breakfast, I get to listen to as well. And he said, and I'm literally, it's been maybe 3 or 4 weeks since we heard this, and I've cannot forget this quote.
I know it.
And he said, there's two best times to plant a tree. One is 30 years ago. The other is today. And I look at this podcast, and technically speaking, we planted the tree of this podcast about a year ago.
Sure.
And I wish I would have planted it 3, 5, 10 years ago. That's okay. I didn't, but I planted it.
I was there pushing you back then too.
You were. And I wasn't ready and all these other things.
And I respect that.
But God, as soon as you can plant that tree. I look back at I was having another conversation with a friend the other day too. I was I look back and the YouTube videos I started creating some 10 years ago almost. Mm-hmm. Which, side note, yes, you pushed me to do as well.
I didn't solicit that.
Encouraged me to do.
I'm not here to take credit for
those.
I'm
glad I started doing those, some 10 years ago. And you know what? Oof, they are rough. Those early ones are rough. I had no idea what it was going to turn into or what it was going to be, but I started doing something. So the concept of planting that tree, And you never know what it's going to grow into. You don't know if it's going to have red flowers or green flowers or giant leaves or tiny leaves or like whatever it may be. You never know. You cannot predict what it's going to grow into. But plant that seed today. Like, just do it.
So I just want to point out, I'm not trying to get credit for any, like you constantly say, yep, husband's idea. I have been here with you, helping you and by your side for the entire path
from
so
zero.
far. I got on the plane and traveled to Philadelphia and other places and did trade shows. When you were not quite ready to be the salesperson for your line, I remember just
oh my God,
faking
you
it,
did.
making it and faking it. And I don't go around looking for that credit. I just, this interview has a lot to do with the fact that I've been right there with you the whole time and supporting you. And
yeah.
And just as much as maybe I do get credit for a couple things out there, you've given the same, inspiration and support for me in all my endeavors. And this podcast has nothing to do with those. But we have a good two-way street, and it's based on engineering and creativity, and there's love above all of that. And I think that that's really unique. I think that you surround yourself with people who are creative like you, and you're going to grow. And
it doesn't have to be people that are creative. I think it has to be people that are supportive and encouraging and that push you.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. It should be a little bit more broad than creative. We've been fortunate to be similarly creative.
Yeah.
But the support is really the most important thing, and having somebody give you that feedback and
it is,
and convincing you that you can do it even though you don't think you can.
Oh my God, it's true, and that's something I also speak of a fair amount. Is just you have got to surround yourself with people that, and this is like so cliche, but people who pick you up and who tell you can do it and encourage you when you fall down. And that's definitely been you, obviously, really strongly for the last 15 plus ish years. Us living together and stuff, but I've been lucky enough that my mom and dad have been insanely supportive, and my sister, and I've had a handful of friends who've like made weird comments about stuff I've done. Nothing super negative, but just weird comments of like, they kind of stick in the back of my head of like, well, why are you doing that? Like, why don't you just have a job? Like, I don't want a effing job. Like, this is my job, even though it doesn't ever feel like a job. But
it feels like a job. I hear.
Yeah, no.
I get it. I get an earful.
It feels like work.
Yeah,
it
feels like work.
A job.
Okay.
But I think that I luckily have those people immediately around me by default, with you and my parents and my sister.
Sure.
Like the 4 people I'm closest with. And then outside of that, I've kind of found my group and my mastermind group and my tribe and my people. I know some people aren't as lucky to sort of have that built-in support network. And that's really, really tough. Like I empathize with that. I can't understand. I never experienced it firsthand, so I don't want to say I understand what you're going through, but I have heard and can only imagine that's really, really tough. So you've got to find those other people. And whether that might be friends you find online or communities you join or like what have you, you got to find it, because you cannot do it by yourself. You cannot do it unless you have people encouraging you, not even like telling you what direction to go, but just making you feel good that you're like doing something that you care about and that matters. And
so yeah. You are fortunate. So you're thanking all those people out there.
Yes.
I was not
Thank you.
I was not trying to drag that out. It just seemed like it went a little wide.
My husband, mom, dad, and sister Robin.
What about the fan base out there? How are you?
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh boy, good thing you're here to tell me what I should be saying.
So this is actually a great time to kind of close the interview out and talk about how no one person can see the full picture. No matter how hard you try.
No, I mean,
and we're fortunate to see a little bit more together. But there's still so much more to be seen on this picture.
So here's what I'll end with. to anyone out there who's ever written me a nice email that has been supportive and has said thank you, and maybe what you've gotten out of some of the content I've created, or how it's inspired you, or whatever it is, there's a good chance I have printed your email out and hung it up on the wall behind my desk, because that is sort of my wall of reminders. Because, you know, there are fully days where, or even sometimes, God, weeks where I'm like, what the F am I doing? I suck. This is terrible. I can't do it. Like, I want to crawl into a hole and die. Maybe not that extreme, but I want to crawl up into fetal position and, like, not talk to anybody, and I just want to give up and I want to do nothing. So, yeah, the support from every listener or YouTube watcher or whoever it is has been phenomenally tremendous, and thank you. It would not be without all of you guys that I would be here doing any of this. And when you do email me and tell me that, I do read it. It does mean a lot, and often I do print that out and tape it up on the wall as a reminder, because there are those days where I am just like, I can't do this. What am I doing? What's the point? This sucks. This is terrible. So your kind words go very far, and
help bridge the gap.
Yeah, and there's always doubt. There's always doubt. Whoever you are, no matter what you're doing, you have doubt if you're doing the right thing, or you have those days you want to give up.
Right.
And that's where that support network and that base of encouragement.
So where can people
really
where can people find out more about you?
You can go to successfulfashiondesigner.com, and that will get you to everything. Yeah, that gets you everything that you need. If you have more questions, I will throw out this. I think I mentioned it earlier, but we have just started incorporating a mailbag episode into the podcast, which means once a month I field questions for an entire episode. I will answer questions that people send in via email. They can be questions for me personally. They can be questions about working in the industry, launching your label, whatever it has to do. Send me your questions, and I will pick the best ones and answer them once a month on an episode. I just recorded the first one last week. It's going live soon after this episode.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it actually is.
That's right.
So email those to podcast@sewheidi, SEWHEIDI.com. We changed from Successful Fashion Designer because it's really a lot to type. So emails are always now something at SewHeidi. The website and everything is still Successful Fashion Designer. But email any questions you have to podcast@sewheidi.com. I would love to answer them. It's a better way for me to answer them, and it's a better way for me to answer them, because that way the answer gets to a lot more ears and a lot more people than me just answering a one-off email.
Yeah. And sometimes somebody else has more information to add too.
Yeah. And I also just don't have the capacity to answer all the questions that I get in email. So this is a way to compile them, and then once a month kind of hit as many as I can of the best ones. So any questions, I would love to answer them on the next mailbag episode. So send those in.
Cool. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Marc.